Welcome to The Turnaround Artists, a podcast about turning things around when they don't go our way. Tune in each week to hear stories of impressive personal and professional turnarounds from a variety of interesting guests. This podcast was inspired by the recent happy turnarounds of its producers, Marisa Mitchell and me, Brian McFarland. We look forward to speaking with you. Welcome back to The Turnaround Artists. In this episode, I am thrilled that my friend and podcast guru, Rory Paquette, has agreed to join us. He is a father, in this order, husband, coach, writer, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur. The list goes on. Seller across the board. And he interviewed me for my first guesting appearance on one of his podcasts, Podcaster Nation. He is also up to episode 168 of The Power of Man. What a labor of love, which is an excellent forum for our listeners to tune into if you haven't already. I just got done listening to that episode 168 called Break Free, and I would encourage every one of our listeners here at the Turnaround Artists to tune into that, whether you're a man, woman, anybody will benefit from that. So welcome, Rory. And why don't you kick things off by sharing your incredible story, which I've only just touched on, and taking the mic away for our listeners.
I appreciate that, Brian. Thanks a lot for having me. And thank you for what you had to say about that episode. That episode, Breaking Free, was it was a heartfelt episode, and it was just one of those that I felt, especially at the time, that I just really needed to get out there. All of the men that I work with seem to be having a situation similar to that, where they're having issues with jobs, and it's just not the way it used to be. Nobody graduates with that or retires with the gold watch anymore, and the pension and the safety. Everybody's fighting till the very end. And, one of the big pushes on that particular podcast is if anybody else has control over your paycheck, then they have control over you. And unfortunately, we just keep finding out, time and time and time again, and example after example, that that is the truth. And too many people have that kind of control over us. And if they can control us that way, that means they also control our families, and they control our households. They control our future, and our literally our plans, for what we're going to do over the next few years, because they control our income. And so that was a big episode. We got a lot of response on that, and I really do appreciate yours. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So, yeah, I've explained to my co-producer and founder, Marisa, who's not in sales, so you just said it best. She didn't understand this for a short while, but I said, in sales, your life every single day is determined by the quota that is set for you, which you have zero control over. And it makes you get up in the morning and either feel great about yourself or feel like you were just told to run a 4-minute mile. And I've never run a 4-minute mile, nor will I ever. So it's just, if you don't like that, then you need to take hold of that and listen to that podcast, and it will really empower you. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I that not to keep talking about that particular episode, but I've been in sales a long time, and we've had those discussions off the air. And one of the things that brought up by that about also is that 20 years ago, you could go out and you'd sell millions of dollars worth of product or service, and your boss appreciated that, and that made you valuable to the company. And today, you go out and you sell that, and then they end up resenting paying you because they feel like that's the expense. And they honestly do view every one of us like we're just replaceable. I'll just find somebody just like you tomorrow with, no attitude and no chip on their shoulder. So be grateful for what you have and how I'm going to treat you. And, I hope, my hope for every single, person, okay, but I speak directly to fathers and husbands more than anything, but for anybody, is that you find that spot at some point. You find that spot where you can monetize your passion, where you can, tell corporate America to go jump in a lake, and where, at the very least, they don't have as much control over you. So that's a lot of what we do in that podcast, in that movement, Power of Man, because I do have a couple of podcasts. But in that one, that's a big push for what we do is, trying to help men become more independent, more accountable just for themselves, not reliant on their jobs, on their bosses, on their wives, that type of thing. So it fits right in with our normal theme. But like I said, with the men that I coach, it's too frequent that comes up. It's become way too common. So
Yeah, amazing. So, what I'm so excited about besides that is I mentioned off air, and I'm just going to lead into this and then turn it over to you. Is you, as I've learned about you in just 2 weeks, you give, you give, you give, and you give selflessly. And I've already gotten from you, and my life partner has gotten from you. So I am so thrilled to be able to turn it back to you and try and give to you, to our small growing platform of the Turnaround Artist listeners, and hear your story. Because from the little that you've told me and sort of our pre-interview, you've really turned things around. And I think I know it will be really empowering and inspiring to, if it's even just one person, as we both agree, then this is all worth it. So
for
take us
sure,
away, sir.
for
Take us
sure,
away.
I love that. Okay, well, my story is, every time I tell my story, um, I'm reminded that there are so many people who have it worse. And as I tell it, I sit there and think, but you made it through. Maybe it's not that bad, but um, I don't want to send that message out to my listeners either, who end up telling me their stories. Everybody's story is relative, and everybody's story is relative to them. It's from their perspective. And so everybody has some kind of a comeback story. Everybody's had some things go wrong in their lives. Um, I've had a lot. I think, at least it feels like a lot to me. And I will tell you that as I sit here today, and as you're saying these nice things about me, and I do appreciate that, I never thought that I was going to be the guy that finished first. I thought from the moment I was born, really, that I was just one of those guys that was going to go out and do his best and never get any credit and never get his just dues, but just keep fighting. You know, so from moment one, I had this mentality. Growing up in a broken home, uh, no father on a good day, and a really lousy one on a bad day, and getting hospitalized from getting beaten up so bad, things like that. A lot of people have dealt with that. I've heard a lot of those stories. But when you start your life that way, you develop a huge chip on your shoulder. And you go into every instance after that figuring that you're going to run into some unfair scenario, that you're going to have to fight your way through it. Um, and for a long time growing up, I was angry about that. Um, I got into adulthood, and met my wife, and we were having kids, and uh, I still underneath it all was angry about all of that. The way that I grew up, and the things that had happened, and the various horrors that I'd had to see. Um, but a little hard to talk about. I'm not used to being on this side of the mic either. But um, you reach a point where you start to kind of count on feeling that way. You find a way to turn that into your biggest strength, that you are just ready to fight at any moment. And I ended up needing that, but it's a double edged sword. I used that to build a real estate business up into the multi-million dollar range, making high six figures, and my family and I were well off by any standard. I had 5 offices in 2 states, um, uh, 52 agents working under us at one point. Real estate agents, doing really good business. Had great people. They were all making good money. It was a really nice spot to be. And then 2008 happened. And you're a little bit older like I am, and you probably remember what happened in 2008 with the crash. Um, and then everything that happened after that. The crash was one thing because we kind of saw it coming. But the stuff that happened after the crash really was what pummeled the small real estate companies, and people don't really know that part of the story. The administration at that point came out with a first-time home buyer, plan. They were going to give them like $8,000 forgivable to put down on a first-time home. And so for 2 or 3 months, I mean, it was lobster dinners. It was feast for all the agents that were out there because everybody came out of the woodwork wanting to buy houses, and it was just wonderful. And the government's great. This plan's great. And I kept looking at them all. I'm like, I feel like I was the only one who saw it. But I told everybody, I said, folks, this isn't creating new buyers. This is just making all of the people that were going to buy now. So all this money you're making, put it away, pigeonhole this stuff, bag it, bury it out in the middle of a field. You're going to need it later. Nobody listened. Nobody listened. We went from 52 agents down to 12 in about 6 months because the market just dried up like the Sahara Desert. And it's exactly what I knew was coming. We hung on as long as we could. And I put every personal penny I could find into trying to keep things running because this was the business, that I had built with my bare hands with no help, all on my own, literally bootstrapping it, and we just, 2012 happened and we knew we were going to get another 4 years of the same thing. And we had to hang it up. We just had to hang it up. We weren't getting relief anywhere. Housing market was not coming back. And we were just too far in. So I let my fighting instinct take over my good sense right around that point in time. And I was so used to fighting that I figured I could just fight my way through all that and that I would come out and I'd win somehow because I don't ever stop fighting. Well, there was a point in there, and I know this now looking back on it, in hindsight, because that's always 2020. But I look back on it in hindsight, and I was probably 12 to 18 months late on waking up and realizing it was time to put down your dukes, and take the gloves off, close it up, find another alternate method, recover, start over. But because I wouldn't stop fighting, I wouldn't let it go. We downsized, kept fighting, downsized, kept fighting, downsized, kept fighting. Even though I knew, here in my brain, I knew that the market wasn't changing. I could see it. And I'm like, okay, what are we continuing to fight for when we know there isn't anything different coming? About 18 months too late, pulling the trigger on just closing the doors. And so, we ended up just losing everything. We lost literally everything. Sold furniture, sold cars, sold clothes, kids' toys. I mean, tried to, keep things going as much as we could, but we ended up, losing our house. It was all of it. So we, friend of a friend, helped me rent a place because I didn't qualify to rent anywhere at that point, with what we've been through. And I went to work for a local TV station selling some advertising, real low. I mean, even back then, low base salary and, maybe a commission someday type of sales job. But, and I just said, look, we just got to start over. We hit bottom. We're going to bounce. We'll figure it out. And then the problem was that I was fighting to get it back. But because, again, I was so used to fighting for my life all the time, I was trying to fight to get back to exactly where I was. I wasn't fighting to get out of the new low position. I was fighting to get back to where we were, back at the top. And, it was more out of, I think, misplaced pride and embarrassment and stuff like that back then. And so, the different things that I tried to kind of get going, they didn't work because I wasn't doing things the way they should be done. I was working out of like an emergency type of mindset. It has to work now. I can't give it 3 months to build it, because I have to make money now. So even after we bounced, we came back up a little bit, then we crashed even harder and ended up losing that place. So we ended up in a neighborhood that was not anywhere you'd ever want to be. Um, a lot of locks in the doors. Luckily, my family and I, have darker skin. Everybody thought that we were Mexican, so it was and I'm not being disparaging or anything. It's just that the neighborhood that we moved into was a lot of lower income folks, and it was a predominantly Mexican neighborhood, and they accepted us. Thank God. And we made some really good friends there. It was nice, but it was not what I had promised my wife and my kids. It was not where I wanted them to be.
Yeah.
So we
Now,
had, yeah, go ahead, please.
let me ask you, Roy. First off, my compassion, and to be honest, I'm proud of you because a lot of other people wouldn't be sitting here doing this, and what you do for people. Growing up the way you did, it sounded like you could have been like, "Woe is me," and went on a lot of different paths. I'm curious with your family situation, right? So what you're describing is you go from, obviously you're making good money, you have a probably nice house and nice cars and nice toys for the kids, and you're treating them well and lobster dinners, like you say, whatever. And then everything's now changing. What are your children and your wife? What's their mindset as you're going on this down of the roller coaster?
It impacted my oldest son the hardest because he really had never known any other kind of life. My daughter, who's older, my daughter's my oldest. And then I have my older son who's in the middle, and then my youngest son. And my daughter didn't feel it as much because she remembered when we were, not that well off and fighting on our way up. So for her, having it all, so to speak, only lasted, a segment of like 6 years. And then it was, we're going to fight again. And she was like, oh, okay, I've been through this. Dad's going to get us through this. So I know we're fine. My youngest son had come up with everything, but was like, oh, this is new. Okay, well, fine. But he was so young that what we had and what he wore and, how people viewed him really didn't have anything to do with, um, really didn't impact his life. And so to him, it was, all right, I have fewer things. Okay, I'm still fine. I'm eating. Everything's good. It was my middle son, or my middle kid, my oldest son, who was at that sort of middle school, going into high school age. It mattered what you were wearing. Sports were real political, and everything else. And when your dad's losing his business and losing everything, and your girlfriend's parents or her dad runs a bank and everything else, it's you don't look real good, and you're a little embarrassed about your situation. It hit him the hardest. But to all of their credit, um, they really they really went with the punches. Um, they trusted that I was going to fix it. I had always fixed everything before, and all of them have talked to me, since then, since we've gotten out of it. But they've talked to me since then. They've all said the same type of thing that, Dad, we just figured you were going to get us out of it. We weren't really worried about it. And it took a little longer than I think my older son thought it was going to take. But even he said, Dad, you got us out of it. We knew you were getting us out of it. Um, my wife took a lot of things hard because she worked really hard to raise those kids and to do her part. She was a stay-at-home mom, worked her butt off, keeping the house, decorating it, picking out all these unique little things, and just making a really nice home for everybody. And she was watching all that kind of get torn apart, but she she never wavered. My wife could have done better than me on accident back then. She could have like covered up her eyes, walked out in the middle of the street, and got bumped by a car with somebody driving it that was better off than I was at that moment. And she never wavered. It's amazing the way they all stuck with me and supported me. I like to think that just means I was doing something right up until then, but I didn't know that at the time. I know that now. Um, at the time, all I could feel was that I was completely letting them all down. I It was the lowest I've ever felt in my life when I was, you know, a kid and my dad was beating the hell out of me. I didn't care nearly as much because I didn't feel like that was my fault. That was happening to me. This was something that I had done. This was something that I had caused, that I had, even better, that I had allowed to happen to my family. And, especially when you're dealing with fathers and husbands, you, your job is to protect, provide, and lead. And I was doing none of those. I had failed miserably at all three. Um, I think the bottom was probably, it was, one night when we were in this, new place. It was pretty rough. Uh, Heard a couple gunshots outside. Kids didn't care. They were like, we're good. Almost joked about it. They all went to bed. My wife went to bed finally. And I was sitting there. And I kind of had enough of all of it. And I really didn't see a way up. And I hate this word. I really hate this word, but I was truly overwhelmed. And I'm one of those guys, I don't allow myself to get overwhelmed. I don't believe in it, but at that moment, the only time in my entire life I can say I felt overwhelmed was right at that moment, because I was looking at it. We owe all this. We got to take care of all this. We've lost all this. I don't know what to do next to get out. I really didn't see a way up and a way out of how I felt. And so for the first time ever, I said, I think they're better off without me. And as I sat there throughout the night, I decided that I was not going to be there anymore. And to the point where I went down the hall to looking at my kids and say goodbye to them. And I went back to the kitchen and I was like, okay, that's it. They're going to be better off without me. They'll be able to go to this relative or that relative. Everybody can blame everything on me. They'll all have a clean start. I really had rationalized it well, in my messed up head. And, I turned the sink on. I'm like, going through all this stuff. And I mean, I had a plan. And I don't know what happened at that moment, but I don't have anxiety attacks or panic attacks or anything like that. I'm not prone to those. I've never had them before or since, but I had something like that. And I just, I started shaking. I started crying. I felt like I couldn't breathe for a minute. And every single part of me screamed in my own face, what the hell are you doing? And I fell to my knees and just sat there on the floor for a couple minutes going, cold sweat pouring down my face. Like, I don't know what really happened. I don't know if you're religious or not, and it doesn't really matter because at this point, I'm pretty sure, God grabbed me back from the edge and said, look, I've let you make your own choices up until now, but how stupid are you? And finally just slapped me. And I don't know how long I was on the floor. Probably felt like hours, but it was probably, a few minutes. Got up, cleaned my face off, went over, sat down in my chair and said, all right, where am I? And I grabbed a fresh yellow legal pad. It was funny because they were in a box from the last place I'd been fired from. It's sitting there. And I pulled out this clean, crisp yellow legal pad that I had stolen from that company because I wasn't leaving there without some office supplies, and one of their pens. And I just started writing. And I think I spent 4 or 5 hours just writing. I started with, what do we owe? I started with, what do we have? And then I was with, okay, what can I possibly do? What's an option? Do I have another option? Let's look at this option. What do I have left to sell? And then I looked at it all, and I had just pages laid across the floor in my living room, probably 30 of them, all written up. And at this point, it's like, I don't know, 6 o'clock in the morning or something. Kids are waking up, wife's coming out, and here's Dad, been up all night, looks like a total wreck, pages of writing all over the floor in the living room. And my wife looks at me, she's like, are you okay? And I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to fix this.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an experience. Thank you for sharing that. You wouldn't know that, right? By looking at you, but that's that's the thing, right? Especially as men, we're not supposed to break down and whatnot. And bless you that you found that higher power. Whether someone's religious or not, right? There's
Right.
always something or somebody that we have to find that's more powerful than us. And what as I'm going to have you continue, what makes that extra special was I keep thinking about the post you had of getting invited to your son's for Super Bowl Sunday. And until you just told that story, I thought that was like, wow, that's really nice. His son, and you complimented him, and you said he's working two jobs and still invited his mom and dad over for dinner to watch the game or whatever it was. And my condolences for the Chicago Bears. As I hear, I hear your pain. I was a Giants fan, so it's not much better here.
Oh man, okay.
Exactly. But I don't really follow football anymore. But now it means so much even more, right? Just hearing that, and thank goodness, because the world's a better place because you're here, and
Thank you.
to find so many of us in this, where I want you to pick back up, like it, you really need to hit rock bottom, like rock bottom when things are down, to turn things around, and you just did. So thank you for sharing that.
That's where it was. That's what it took. Yeah. I got up off the floor and cleaned myself up and just went out to find jobs. And I ended up, and this is another one of those things, whether it's, God, or it's the universe aligning, or wherever you subscribe your beliefs to. I, in the next 2 days, found a full-time job working, outside sales in the field, very autonomous, for a uniform company. Found another job working from home, doing telesales, and back then that wasn't very common, for an insurance company. Both of them paid a base salary, and I got hired to start throwing newspapers, in the mornings, for like $200-300 a week, doing that. And after my first day of doing that, they said, "Hey, we have a route right next to you. You're doing great." I mean, I had done it before 20 years ago. So, and they said, "Do you want to pick up this other route also?" And so I was spending like 4 or 5 hours in the middle of the night doing newspaper delivery, which basically was like a full-time job also. So I managed to put together 3 full-time jobs. And the only catch was I had to sleep for about an hour a night to get it all done, maybe an hour and a half. And, my wife was like, "You can't do this." And I'm like, "Watch me." And for 6 months I did. And I managed to not only do that, but be successful at all 3 jobs for, roughly 6 to 8 months. Then of course it starts to catch up with you. But having 3 incomes, through just sheer will and just fight, got us out of it. And about a year after that happened, we were able to find a rental house back in very close to our old neighborhood, in the kids' school district. Really nice home, the whole bit, that came out of nowhere because there's never rentals anywhere in this area, and got back. And my kids never had to leave their school, which is like the best school around here, with the best sports teams. And my boys are huge athletes. Both received full scholarship offers, so they were huge athletes. It was really important for them to stay where they were. And we made it back. It took that and almost dying, but we made it back.
Right. Wow. What a success story. And congratulations on that. What are their sports, by the way?
They both played football, and they both threw shot put and discus in track.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They did
Wow.
exactly the same. They even both played linebacker. I mean, they're like very similar, competing against each other nonstop.
Okay. And thus that helped, obviously, financially, that their school was paid for, right, on full scholarship. Now, one question during that time is, congratulations to you on that, but you do have to, the sacrifice you have to make, was yourself. You you can't last long sleeping an hour and a half a night,
Right.
right? It's just physiologically impossible. But even the bigger thing is you sounds like such a great father who's so focused on his children, and as a husband, you're not going to see them, right? If you're working 23 hours a day, you're not spending much time at home. So how did you balance that? Because they're probably asking your wife, like, how come dad's always gone? And that's got to be tough, right? Because you can't do both. But I guess I'm just curious to how you manage that.
Again, I was fortunate. The two full time jobs overlapped, which was good, and they had similar people I was calling on also. So I kind of was walking around with two business cards for a little while. Oh, hey, we talked about your insurance, and hey, let me talk about your uniform rental needs. It was like the same type of thing. And the businesses out there were a little like, oh, you do both? That's a little weird. And I was like, hey, you know what? But I'm here for you. So worked out okay. But I wasn't home as much. And honestly, that's where my wife really was, in her element. We decided long ago when we decided to have kids that we both really wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom. And uh, it wasn't really a sacrifice for either one of us. So we both had the same vision for how we wanted to raise our children. And we, from the get go, were willing to make that sacrifice. Yeah, we wouldn't have the second income. We wouldn't have as much money, but we'll find a way to get them everything they need because we think this is really important. Um, she did that during that stretch also. She could have taken off and gotten a job also, and I wouldn't have had to work 3. But then what happens to the kids? And we were out of their district driving them into the district. So we couldn't put them on a bus. It was all logistically very difficult. So again, the smartest thing to do was for me to work myself near to death and have her run the house, get the kids everywhere they had to be, get them to and from school. We had no real transportation for them. They had different start and end times. They were playing different sports at different schools. They're 4 years apart. So, while one's in high school, the other one's in middle school, and those schedules don't fit at all, of course. One starts at like 7:30, the other one starts at 8:45. You're like, thanks for nothing. Appreciate the school system. Thanks for helping. But so she really took that on. And she carried a lot of the weight because she carried a lot of the emotional weight of the kids too. Like when they were asking, hey, where's dad? They were asking her that question. And so she took that on. And she's like, your dad is out fixing things. Your dad is out getting us out of here, out of where we're living. All right, your dad's out there trying to fix everything that happened to us. And they were like, okay. Bought right in. And I think, I've said that, my 3 kids really, really supported me a lot, and have really handled things well. One of the biggest reasons they did was because of my wife, because they had their mom right there, not tearing down dad, not talking about how dad had messed everything up, not arguing with me when I had 5 minutes at home. You know what I mean? We came together during that period more than we ever had before. And let me back up for a minute because I'd be remiss if I didn't say I'm an incredibly lucky man that I've had the wife I've had for, almost 30 years. Without her, I'm not sure we make it through all of it because all of my work and everything I had to go do, I couldn't do if she wasn't devoting every minute of her time to our family and to handling every question they had and every worry that came up and every after school thing and during school thing and to and from school thing. No way I'd handle it all without her or with someone who wasn't on my team like that. If I would have had a situation where my wife was upset about what had happened to the point where she blamed me and, was tearing me down, I never would have lasted. But, 6 months on all those jobs, and then I cut back a little bit, but still went another 6 months on maybe 2 hours of sleep, and it is what it is, that all caught up with me later. But during that time, it's what had to be done. It was sacrifice that had to be made. And my wife is really the credit for getting us all through it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you deserve each other. And I'm so glad you found each other. And obviously, as we've learned, we all learn, I hope, that behind every, great woman is a great man and great man is a great woman or partner, right? Let's, be correct on that. So that's so inspiring, and a thank you to her, for helping you be the best you could be and doing the right thing by your family.
No.
As you know now, so you've hit bottom, you've dug yourself up. Interesting, delivering newspapers. That's when we talked. That's how I started my sales career. So what's old is what's new again, right? You just have
Right.
to do anything you can do. So as you're making this ascent, I guess walk us through. It's never it's not a hockey stick of just sales is never that, right? Life
No.
turnarounds are never that. What were some of the challenges as you were coming up, the hockey stick of life? Because it's not a straight vertical line or whatnot. So what else gets thrown your way that's above rock bottom, but still preventing you to be all you can be, which is, I guess, now.
Sure. Since the crash, you mean, like since the crash and the comeback? Yeah, it's um, there have been several. The biggest one for me has been the constant battle between trying to take care of my health and wanting to work as much as possible and just grind like no other human being can grind. That's just a mindset that I've had my whole life. That's why I started that way when I started telling the story. It's been part of my DNA. And so the problem with that, like you just said, you can only last so long sleeping 1 hour and then even 2 hours. So when we finally get out of it and I'm down to one job, and I'm doing a sales job and maybe the occasional part-time DoorDash or whatever to put a little extra away, that type of thing. Running my own businesses and getting back into that frame of mind. The um, the battle between those two mindsets, where you have to take care of yourself and you have to go out and do everything that's possible. They're constantly at odds, and so my health against my hours has been my biggest fight because I had a job. I worked for 6 years, and I just left there maybe 2 years ago. Uh, and working for a big bread company, in outside sales and distribution and stuff. And I worked almost 8 hours a week. Legit. You're working 6 days a week, and then on the seventh day, you're picking up small shifts to go out and check merchandising things and check displays and everything else, and try and get a few more sales because it's an extra day. And you don't really think about the fact that you're never resting, you're never letting your body recover. Your sleep is garbage. Your diet's not great. So, um, and then all of a sudden, uh, just a few months ago, I realized that my health battle had gotten so bad that I had been carrying full blown fourth degree pneumonia around with me for over a year. And my left lung had been filling up with fluid really badly. And so I was constantly coughing and, sniffling. And I just thought I was having really horrible allergy attacks all the time. When I started doing interviews for Podcaster Nation, almost every interview I was sipping tea, doing a cough drop right up until the time that we hit record, and apologizing to everybody for having to cough, and things like that during the podcast. I didn't think anything of it. And then on September 19th, I woke up, didn't feel real good, and was very short of breath. And throughout the day, I was noticing my breathing was getting shorter and shorter and shorter. My wife, came home, and she goes, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, I might be having a problem because my breathing is getting smaller and smaller. I couldn't take a breath like that at all. And it got to the point where I said, if we keep going down the same path here, I won't be able to breathe in the next 15, 20 minutes. We need to go to the hospital. And she dropped everything and threw me in the truck, and we took off. And she drove me there. She's running red lights and breaking laws and everything to get me to the hospital, and gets me to the emergency room faster than any ambulance could have. I'm telling you that right now. And I walk into the emergency room, and the final bit of, black just goes out. And I hit the ground, apparently. I was done breathing. That was it. They grabbed me up. I woke up somewhere in the back of the hospital in some room. They had stuff in my throat and tubes in me and everything else. And they're like, "Hey, you back? You there?" And my entire left lung had completely shut down. I was totally full of fluid and had a big casing of frozen fluid around the outside of it. And my right lung finally said, "We can't carry the load for all this anymore. We're done." And it just gave up. And so 3 weeks in the hospital and a couple of pretty major surgeries, one of which I should not have survived. And here I am today. I had, about a month of rehab before I could get back on podcasting. So my podcaster nation had a bit of a break in the middle of it as I was building it because of this. But I have another 6 to 9 months of total recovery from it. But I'm much better now. Obviously, I don't look like I'm walking into a hospital, do I?
No,
Okay.
not in the slightest. And I was going to say, you're the man with the golden voice. If our listeners are of age, I would say the Sinatra of podcasting.
Oh, wow.
If you like Sinatra,
Oh, I'm
um,
Italian. Are you kidding me? You can't give me a bigger compliment than that. That's the biggest compliment I've ever gotten from anybody. Oh my God.
I'm glad. I thought of that as I was listening to the Power of Man, because I was like, and I grew up. Probably at the time you did too. Well, the radio stations on Long Island, there was a program, it was called Saturdays with Sinatra,
Yeah,
and my mom, and she put that on every week, and I just, I don't think there's ever been a greater voice. And I
I
did
don't
have the
either.
pleasure of seeing him at Radio City Music Hall before he passed. May he rest in peace. And he was really at the end of his career and his life.
Yeah,
But just to get that experience, to see, that man do what he had done for so long and bring joy to so
I
many
bet.
people, was incredible. So
Yeah, I bet.
I'm glad you like that. And that raises a good point, and I guess pretty commonsensical thought to our listeners and to you and to me, that you balance, in life is everything, right? Like you
Hmm.
literally worked yourself almost to death.
Yeah,
And
twice.
of what value, right, would you have been to your family then,
Right.
right? So you didn't have it. So one question, as we're heading into our closure, but one question
Yeah.
I've had prevailing throughout this entire discussion is that, you had that brutal childhood of which no one should have to deal with. And as I'm interviewing people, like, I'm just hearing this more and more and more and more. And I
Yeah.
can't believe there's adults who treat children this way. It's hard to grasp, right? And you had it happen to you.
Yeah.
But here you are today. Is, I guess, talk to me a bit about, because we've been getting on this thread on the Turnaround Artist about mental fitness or
Hmm.
mental health. So, have you engaged, besides your physical health failing, have you at all engaged? How did you keep your mind and wits about you? Because your brain is arguably the most important muscle in your body. So, what do you do to keep yourself mentally healthy, or what did you do to keep yourself mentally healthy and get over that childhood trauma? Because that's as serious as it gets.
Um, it's going to sound self-serving, but a lot of it is my podcast, and that is my therapy. It's my chance to. One of the things that people don't do is tell their story, and people don't talk about the things that happened. And so when people suffer from mental health issues, usually it's from repressing all that. Is what I've found. Um, and I've talked to some people on and off. I mean, I interview a lot of therapists. And so I have several therapists that are clients of mine right now in podcasting, and they're doing great. So I get an occasional free, talk session with them just to kind of let some things off, off the hook. But um, my podcast has been my biggest piece of therapy. I started it almost 5 years ago, doing the Power Man, and it's my opportunity to talk about not just how I think things should be or observations that I have, but mistakes I've made. Scars uh, that I've received, over the years, and what led to them, and being able to talk about all of that, and then have the feedback from the listeners Since episode 9, we've had very heavy feedback. Episode 9 of mine was on bullying. And it was the first one where all of a sudden I realized everybody knew I had a podcast. The first 7 or 8, 20, 30 people might listen. Somebody might say something to me in a gas station, hey, man, caught your podcast. But episode 9 was huge, went berserk in terms of the number of downloads. And I got over 100 DMs all of a sudden out of nowhere. And a lot of people I knew, a lot of people I had never heard of before, all because this bullying theme, that I've talked about hit home with so many people. And it was about me actually being bullied when I was younger. And so many people who knew me and know me today as me were like, wait a minute, you? I mean, I'm not a little guy. You can't tell through the camera, but I'm a larger, Italian guy. When I'm wearing my black suit, my black trench coat, I look like a hitman. I mean, I look like I should be standing next to Brando. But it's, they look at me and they're like, you? Wait, you? I had no idea. And for a lot of them, then they wanted to tell their stories, and that's where I've been, is that I've had the opportunity to talk and to tell my stories through my podcast and to people who want to hear them and want to learn from them. And so that's been my biggest thing. When I was in the hospital recovering, I was listening to my podcast over and over and over. I started at episode 1. I just started listening to all, at that time, probably 150, 160 episodes of it or whatever it was. So we're over 170 now, but I just listened to those because it was a reminder to me of all these things that I had talked about and all these things I had gotten out and all that poison I had let loose. And it made me, when I was laying there in the bed, feeling like 5 tubes sticking out of me and wondering if I was going to wake up every time I took a nap. And it made me very grateful for where I was, because I was reminding myself that I wasn't always there. I used to be in a much worse spot than laying in a hospital bed surrounded by people that love me and people trying to help me.
So, wow. Yeah. That's amazing. So, wow, you just keep teaching me. So I'll just, and I will tell you, I'm a rookie podcaster, so I've already learned so much from you just by our first interaction and now listening. But to hear that you could find therapy in really getting a raw deal in life, in so many ways, right, that you didn't deserve. No one deserves that, to grow up like that. And those scars are, you've overcome them, but they'll be forever with you. Yeah. To find passion, right? I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from this discussion is you finding your passion in podcasting. It helps so many others, present company included, but you also helped yourself. That's amazing. And I can share my little secret in that. And I told my life partner this, and she gets it. I love listening to my podcasts because I love to hear the sound of my own voice. But it teaches me, I'm like, oh, you can do a better interview. Like, you can be a better listener. Like, you're not funny all the time. You don't need to interject. But I'm cautiously optimistic but I'm in no rush. That episode 9, I think we're up to episode 8. Maybe this is the one that takes us over the line, because I keep going to my Spotify stats. I'm like, only 27 this time. Like, when's the one that's going to hit? But it's just patience. It's just don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't do that. No, we'll talk off the air, but do not do that. Come on.
No, I know. But we're salespeople, right? So it's always like, what are my numbers? And you keep looking, and it's not a healthy way. I agree, and I'll have to learn a lot more from you than that. So I guess I want to thank you. I want to close up shop here, and I want to turn the microphone over to you to give to our listeners. There's been so many nuggets here that are so helpful. I can speak for myself. I'm sure I can speak for anyone who's listening to this. There's never just one thing, but what's the primary thing that you could share with people that really enabled your entire turnaround? And I've obviously shared a lot with that, but if you just drill it down as you do so eloquently in each of your episodes, that people can walk away with that takeaway.
I appreciate that. There's a lot of different directions I could go with that. There's a lot of things we talk about in the podcast that are absolutes, that I really believe in, heart and soul. But there's one thing that I've really realized recently, that I'd like to kind of focus on, if that's okay with you, and just, if we have one more minute, I just want to make sure I want to get this out.
Plenty of
Okay,
time, of course.
I appreciate it. It's uh, one thing I never had in my life was a community, ever. I've been a lone wolf since the day I was born. And there's a lot that's attractive about that. And there's a lot that helps you get through life that way. Um, but it's also, when you are having a really hard time, it's very lonely. It's a very lonely spot to be. And what I realized when I was in the hospital this last time, with my last life threatening thing that I looked at, um, I had people I'd known forever that, didn't even bother to say, "Hey, glad you're okay." People that I had, worked with fairly recently, nobody even messaged me. You know, I posted online from the hospital to talk to people that followed me regularly, to talk to my different communities, Power Man, Podcaster Nation, because I wanted them to know what was happening. So like, if you're in the Podcaster Nation group, you can go back and look, and there's a live or two from me in the hospital, talking about what's going on. And I wanted people to know, hey, you put your faith in me to get this podcast out and to tell your story. I am going to do it. Please don't lose patience. Here's what's going on. The unbelievable outpouring of support that I got. And I don't just mean like, hey, hope you're good with like a thumbs up. I'm talking constant check-ins, phone calls, messages, you name it. I got it from those two communities. The Power Man I expected, because I had invested, almost 200 episodes in those people. And I had been coaching there for a long time. So I kind of expected, a good, strong support from them. And I got it, to their credit. But the Podcaster Nation folks, I had just met. And I had just met, only talked to them a few times sometimes. But because of what we do, and because we're all so passionate about what we do and we just love it, there's some sort of connection there where the outpouring of support from the Podcaster Nation folks was off the charts, and still is. I still have people, "Hey, I heard the most recent episode. Sounds good. Are you doing okay, though?" They have no reason to send a message like that. None. I mean, by all metrics, I look fine. I sound fine. I'm moving fine. I do good, right? We're being productive. No reason for anybody to be checking on me. And they still are. Tons of them. So my thing to any listener is, even though the lone wolf sounds attractive, if you can find a community, find one. I don't care, if you're a husband or a father and you're looking for a brotherhood, if you're a mother and you're looking for, other moms, if you're a woman who's an executive of some kind, or a career woman and you're talking to other career women, find people who are doing what you're doing, who are trying to support each other. Find a community and contribute to it as much as possible. And when you need them, they'll be there. And believe me, when you need them, you really need them. And you'll be very glad that you gave everything you gave to that community when you see it all come back in that one moment when you really need it.
That is, I'm getting just such amazing energy through my body. It's so special, and it's really empowering and motivating, and I can back that up in saying that anyone who knows me, when I'm talking about our episodes, my journey in sobriety has taught me so much. I was a lone wolf like you, and it wasn't until I made myself vulnerable and gave myself up to a higher power and gave myself up to a group of people in a room who I'd never met before in the basement of a church that I was able to get myself on the right path. And it led me here. It's a show called The Turnaround Artists,
Yeah.
right? So you embody that, and community is everything, right? We are but one person, and the strength of, like your son's football team, right? One linebacker can't do it alone. They need 10 teammates. So that's amazing. So thank you, Rory. Very humbling. Tell our listeners, of course, please, promote yourself, promote your communities. Where can they find you? Where should they listen to you? How can they learn like I did? And just get the message out there.
Well, if you're a father or a husband or you want to become one, or if you're a wife or significant other and you want to listen so that you can, pass on some of the advice to your male counterparts, Power Man is the podcast that put me on the map and that has driven me to get where I am today. Look us up, and it's not the Power of Man; it's just Power of Man. If you search it and it doesn't come up, search it by my name, and I'm sure that's on your podcast someplace. Because they do like to shadow ban us every once in a while. Because we talk about things like responsibility and accountability and masculinity, and a lot of folks out there don't like to hear that stuff. So we get shadow banned every once in a while. But we have a group also for fathers and husbands. It's on Facebook. It's called The Power of Man Within. That I would encourage anybody who wants to apply for. And hey, we'd love to have you in there. We talk about this kind of thing all the time in there. So we do features in there and stuff like that. So the other community that I've got right now that is incredible and is growing is the Podcaster Nation. And we just started that a little while ago. That's the other podcast I'm doing, which is growing by leaps and bounds. I think we have 60 episodes right now in the queue waiting to be published, which is great. And I'm still interviewing. So and that is, if you're a podcaster and you have not come to me to let me have you tell your story on our show, then please contact me about the Podcaster Nation. It's growing. It's going to be huge. And I hope that everybody can get into it and can benefit from it.
That is awesome. And I will second that and say my podcasting abilities and motivation and excitement since I met you is hockey sticking it. And the fact that you just gave me the platform to be the first time I was ever a guest, I will be forever thankful. But we're going to know each other a long time, whether you like it or not.
Sounds good to me. And I love what you guys are doing here. I really enjoy your show. This is to have people just come on here just to tell their story. That's therapeutic for them. And they may not have that opportunity a lot of other places. I really like what you guys are doing. Don't stop doing it. Don't stop doing it.
No, thank you so much. And I was so inspired when I listened to Break Free, and you gave the stats on how many podcasts there are and how many have more than 100 episodes. Like, it gave me so much faith and cautious optimism in what we're doing here, because everybody starts one, but the percentage, I forget what you said, that make it to 100 episode, it was like 3.8% or something like that.
1.2.
1.2.
1.2.
Right. So yeah, I mean, my life partner's mom said, are you guys gonna, wow, you really found something here. Are you going to make money off this? And we're like, we're not in this for the money. That's not the point, right? It's to help people. And she's like, well, how can you survive? Everyone's got a podcast. And, there's 800,000 podcasts out there now, or that's what's claimed. But then when you hear everybody gets into it with the best intentions, but then doesn't want to follow through and get to 100 episodes.
Absolutely.
So
I keep the stats next to me right over here on this piece of paper. I go back to them all the time. It's right here at my desk. Like it's on a napkin, but I never let them go.
As long as they're asking there in your studio, they're gold.
They're right there.
So fantastic. Well, Rory, thank you so much on so many levels from both Marisa and myself. You've done so much for us both personally, professionally with our podcast. And obviously, I'm going to have future episodes, I hope, with you to, listen to Power of Man, join the group, like you said. And, we'll post all the links and everything when we get this episode live. We should be in the next few weeks. I don't do 9 interviews a day like you do.
You're lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But bless you for doing that. Yeah. And this has been really special. So thank you so much, Rory.
Thank you.
So You're welcome. Thank you. And to all our listeners at the Turnaround Artists, both Marisa and I, thank you so much. We're truly touched with today's guest. And we thank you as a listener so much, because what you've done is you've let us into your home, your life, your car, your ears, and given us the most valuable resource that you have, which is your time. So I hope in exchange, we have given you something, even one little thing that is of benefit to you. If you've enjoyed the episode and you know someone who can benefit from this, as I think we all can, please share it with them. And also, if you'd like to be a guest, send us an email at hello@theturnaroundartist.org. We also have a website, theturnaroundartist.org, so you can reach us there. The listenership is growing. The people we're hopefully helping is growing, and we are here for you, because to provide you service makes us truly, truly, truly happy. So thank you so much for listening in. And thank you again, Rory, for all you've done. And we're looking forward to getting this episode live.
Thanks.